And for a long time, that pain is what fueled us. God has had to work that pain out of us because you can't work from a place of pain. You have to work from a place of purpose. And at some point, you've got to realize that if you work from a place of pain, this isn't even our notes here. If you work from a place of pain, the seed will die at some point. Well, welcome to today's episode of You've Got to Hear This, a lifestyle podcast with conversations created to help you take big risks, defy limitations, endure through the struggles, and build a life you love. I'm one of your hosts, Crystal Tullos, along here with my amazing husband and co-host, Tyler Tullos.
That's right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. And we are so grateful to everyone who's been listening and sharing and subscribing. We're here to come alongside your story and share the wisdom and experience we've gained in our 20 years of marriage, of working in the ministry as pastors, real estate agents and developers, parents, business owners, and entrepreneur ninjas. Come on, somebody. Okay. To just be a resource to you as you navigate and live out your story. And in each episode, we want to share practical wisdom, practical help, and practical strategy. All of the stuff we think you've got to hear so that you can build and live a life you love. And today's episode is especially near and dear to our hearts because today's episode is where we introduce you, our podcast audience, to what has become just the fifth love of our life, our fifth child almost. And that is the thing that we just love and care so much about. And that is StoryHeights Church, which this episode is being recorded live in front of right now. Come on, live audience, where are you at? Awesome. We are so grateful for you being here. We're so grateful for the story that you have allowed us to tell from the 27-year-olds full of faith and nothing else that moved here from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to plant and start this church. It is truly an honor to be with you today and be sharing some of these stories about how God has brought this to life.
Yes, so today as we record this episode, we want to kind of mile mark. The church has grown from just Tyler and I and our two little boys 13 years ago when we moved here into this really amazing church family of about 300 immensely diverse people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, from all different parts of the world, with a singular focus to help people connect their story to God's story. We are a Jesus-proclaiming, Bible-preaching, Holy Spirit-filled church in this region of Massachusetts. And together, we as a church open our doors Sunday after Sunday so people can worship God and learn about the Bible, learn about his love for them.
That's good.
We run and fund a crisis center in the inner city of Boston, meeting people where they're at. We run a rewrite program for single mothers coming out of addiction, granting them childcare and rent payments so that they can rebuild their life. And most recently, our church opened an innovative co-working office with childcare amenities and party rentals to serve a really felt need of our community. And the people of this church are incredible. It's a real honor to be a shepherd and to be a leader in this region of New England. And this episode, I just can't wait to get in, Tyler, because in the last year, we have experienced over 40% of growth in the number of people. And there are so many people here in this audience today and who come to church week after week who really don't even know the story of how StoryHeights came to be.
Yeah, and so you may be hearing these stories for the first time, either live or on the recording or the podcast episode. And we hope and pray that you are encouraged by these stories. There is also a chance that you're sitting here now or listening and you were there for these stories. And equally so, we hope that as much as the first time hearers are encouraged by the stories, we hope that the people who lived these stories out with us, that you're refreshed by these memories. Like, I really believe that it's as much for the people who were here from the drop as the people who walked in the door or tuned in today for the very first time. Either way, we believe you've got to hear this.
That's right. So, and you may never start a church if you're listening here. You may not even be a church person if you're listening to this podcast today. But we really believe that our church's story is for every person who has ever felt like they're an underdog, like they are David fighting Goliath. Maybe you're up against something that feels bigger than you, that there's no way you're ever going to achieve it. This person is for you. And we believe that if you'll put into some practice some of the principles that we're going to lay out before you as we tell our story, you too can defy your limitations and begin to build and live a life that you love. And today, if there's one thing that our church's story should convince you of, the one thing that you've got to hear is that you can realize your vision. You've got to hear this.
Yeah.
You can realize your vision no matter how small or under-resourced you are. Small is a mindset. It is not a limitation.
That's good.
You've just got to keep building.
That's good.
Come on, you've got to hear that.
That's
So
good.
we're going to tell you all about how to overcome this small mindset in today's episode. But before we do, we want to bring you a call to action here. Do us a favor. If you find anything in this podcast that speaks to you, hit that subscribe button now. Share it with a friend. Rate and review it. Trust us, sharing not only supports this podcast, but it might just be the encouragement that someone else needs today.
All right. So, Crystal, let us start at the very beginning, which, according to The Sound of Music, and is the greatest movie of all time, is the very best place to start. Can I have a good amen for any Sound of the Music? Oh, we need to talk apparently. I got a very passionate response back there. So we're going to start at the beginning. That's the very best place. Crystal, why don't you tell everyone how this beautiful church that so many people over the years have called home, and so many people still today have found a place to be at home in. Tell us what it came from.
Well, just like anything, this church came from a tiny seed, just a tiny seed form. You know, just like anything that grows in the world, whether it's a business or a friendship, a marriage, a dating relationship, a new baby, building a family, it all comes from a little seed that is just full of life, full of potential. And this seed, it may be born out of a passion or maybe even a frustration. Maybe you're just looking for a new adventure. Maybe you feel a real felt need in your world. And there will just be these seeds of ideas that get planted into your heart. And every seed goes through the same life cycle. It plants in the heart of your soil and your mind, right? And over time, that seed, that idea, if you nurture it, it will be fertilized, it will germinate, and then it will go dormant. And eventually the seed dies and this new plant fills the seed structure and begins to grow. And your ideas, your visions, our idea all those years ago went through that same process. And it's in this process, I mean, you really can't begin to imagine, none of us can, how a tiny seed grows into this ginormous tree, right? None of us will ever be able to truly wrap our minds. We've all been to biology.
I mean, unless you're like a farmer or something, right? Like you might.
Yeah, but still, like our minds can't comprehend how a teeny tiny microscopic egg becomes a human being, right? Out of, like, it is this wondrous thing that truly we may understand in theory, but we can't understand how a seed comes to life. And I call this phase of our story the stage of wonder. And we've gone through many of these stages. We're currently in one right now. It's a cycle. And so in this stage, like when you're beginning to have ideas, what I've learned is that when you're in this stage, the seeding phase of your life, it's really important to just lean into the wonder, right? Lean into it. Like this is the stage when it's all full of hypotheticals. It's all full of questions. It's all full of confusion. You're asking the question a lot of, what if we did this? Tyler, you get a lot of what ifs in our home.
I feel like I swim in the lake of what if, like what if lake. Like, and it's not even like a swim. It's like just paddling. Like what if? It's nonstop.
I'm an idea girl, but in this stage of wonder, I've just had to tell myself, get really comfortable in the wonder.
It's good, Chris.
Right? Because so many of us, we want the answer right now. We want to see the dream come to pass right now. But I've learned that the dream, the Bible actually speaks this, it will tarry. It takes time. The seed has to go through a process.
Yeah.
And so you've just got to get comfortable in that wonder stage. So that's the first thing that I would just say to every listener, every person in the room, no matter where you are in your idea phase. There may be a dream brewing in yours or something you want to see started. You're believing for a child or you're tired of being single. Whatever that is, you've got a new career ahead or a new promotion. Whatever that phase is for you, get comfortable in the wonder.
It's good. Yeah. And that is exactly the process that we put ourselves in, not even knowing when we first walked the streets of this beautiful city called Boston in 2007. Our oldest child was 5 months old. And we came here as tourists just to see and experience a different part of this country.
Yeah, so for our podcast listeners, we're showing video or pictures, old pictures right now, which will all be as bonus content at you'vegottahearthis.com.
And there was this husky stranger with a giant head that joined us on that trip. We don't remember who he was, but
that was you.
A husky fella. Everybody say, God bless.
God bless.
Them husky brothers. Come on. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'll always be husky in my heart. But we came on this trip and we could sense God like just saying something. We couldn't hear it, but we could sense him saying something. We knew he was speaking. Simultaneously, we were feeling this unexplainable dissatisfaction with the amazing life that we were living and had built in Baton Rouge and the church that we worked for and the staff that we were a part of. But we just kind of said, almost jokingly, if our church ever planted or started a campus in Boston, we'd leave it all and we'd sign up and we'd go and be on that team like tomorrow. We just absolutely loved it. And what happened during that trip was we didn't even realize it, but God was planting that seed in our heart. The seed for this church was planted, 15 and a half years ago now, 16 and a half years ago now.
And I think the team has a picture of us looking over the Boston Harbor. Our first child, who's 16 now, was just in his stroller. And I remember us having a conversation looking over the Boston Harbor of this stage of wonder, like, what if we lived here one day?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would it be like? And we did some research over that next couple of years, like what was the least churched region in America? And at the time it was Boston. And we walked around like in Boston Commons and we saw all the old church buildings and we saw old church buildings being turned into condos. And that just made us really sad. I mean, this is where all of the revivals in America happened. Like the story of Christianity started. I just remember at 27 thinking, what if God used us here to like keep that story going, right? Yeah. And that is kind of where we got started and where the idea was planted in our heart.
That's right. Down in the seaport. That's where it all started. And so maybe you're in that, we'll call it that seaport season of your own life, of your own story, right? What seed, what idea, what thought has been planted in your heart, and what do you do with it? So here's some encouragement on what you can do with it. The first thing, when any season of wonder you find yourself in, is that you've got to get healthy. You have to get healthy. Not like other people around you or circumstances around you. You have to get healthy. Soil, I don't know much about agriculture, but I know if the soil's no good, it don't matter how strong the seed is. It doesn't matter how big the seed is. If the soil's no good, it ain't gonna grow. It won't. You gotta get healthy. The circumstances around you can contribute to the condition of the soil that the seed is planted in, but the circumstances around you are not responsible for the condition of the soil that is within you. You are, baby. And if you don't take care of your soil, it doesn't matter how beautiful that seed is or the potential of that seed is, it's not gonna grow. You got to get healthy. You got to work through it.
In this process, while you're getting healthy, you've got to vet yourself. Like if you get an idea tomorrow, right, to move across the world and start a new company, I'm all for that idea. But you've got to start vetting yourself. This was in 2007 when God put that seed in our heart. We did not bring this outside of our home until 2009 when we first brought it to our senior pastor. We held that seed in safe condition in our hearts while we vetted ourselves. In this vetting process, you've got to go through there's a passage of scripture in Psalm 139 where the psalmist writes, "Investigate my life, O God.
Wow.
find out everything about me, cross-examine and test me, get a clear picture of what I'm about. That's in the Message version. And this is that process. When you get the idea, so many of us make the mistake. We just start running full steam ahead without taking stock of the soil conditions of our own heart.
Yep.
And we don't vet ourselves. And if we're not careful, there will be a lot of selfish ambition, a lot of hidden agenda, a lot of bad motive, that the seed will eventually die because we didn't vet our process and allow God to test us in this process. So that's the first thing that you've got to do in this early stage of wonder is you've got to get healthy. The second thing is you've got to keep the seed safe.
Got to keep it safe.
This seed, I mean, think about it. It's kind of like when a woman finds out she's pregnant. Women can know as soon as day one. You just can feel something different in your body. But common sense says you may not want to go tell everybody you're pregnant until it's like for real safe in the womb. Because there's a chance you'll miscarry and then you'll have to go through the embarrassment that the seed died.
Yeah, we made that mistake, I think, early on. We did keep it to ourselves for a while, but then once we kind of opened the door of conversation, we didn't just crack it open. We kicked that thing open, like Jean-Claude Van Damme kind of kicked it open. Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I think it's
that
natural.
dude's old, right? Jean-Claude Van Damme.
It's natural. We were young. You're excited.
Oh, yeah, man.
You know,
26 years old. We know everything. We know everything at 26 years old. We had it all figured out. We told everybody exactly what we needed to do.
The reason you've got to keep this is because the seed is so fragile right now. And the most well-meaning people in your life, they will, without thinking, they won't even know what they're doing. It's not like somebody's like out to get you.
Right.
But they will say things and do things that will crush your hope, your excitement, your confidence.
Yeah. You remember that guy? He was a pastor here, actually, a church planter here, that when we came to visit Boston with that intention, like let's really hear from God on this. I called him or emailed him somehow, and I was like, hey, I'd love to talk to you. We're thinking about coming up here to plant a church. And he's like, yeah, let me take you to lunch. And we met in Fenway, and he took me to a hot dog place. I don't even remember the name of it, but it was like, I'm thinking, hot dogs? Like, all right. And I know now why he took me to hot dogs, because he set me down. And this is 26-year-old Tyler, like full of faith and dreams. And this is why you got to keep the seed safe, because he basically to me said, dude, don't come. And I was like, what? He goes, it's not going to work. No, maybe you misunderstood me. Like we're believing God for this. And he's like, don't bother. This is what he said. You'll never find a deed-letted apartment for your family. Your children are going to get sick and they might die.
That's a true story.
I was like, how did we get to the death of my children from hot dog lunch to now I don't have any, like my kids are dead. It was the craziest thing, but it was like, that's why you gotta be very selective.
And that guy had been here and he had figured out how hard it was, and he's not even here.
He's not here. Believe it or not, he moved back to Illinois, but whatever. You got to keep it safe. You got to keep it safe.
The third thing briefly is not only do you need to protect the seed in this stage, but you also got to be ready for pain. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be the joy burster here for everybody with a brimming idea in your brain. Go for it. But I'm just telling you, it's going to cost and it's going to hurt. For us, I think about the sheer pressure that a seed undergoes to, like, it literally dies. The seed has to die. And I think about, I've had 4 babies, and I was so lack of courage that I just had the epidural like the moment I walked in the hospital. Who do I got to tell right now? I don't want to feel nothing. I have had 4 babies, and I do not know what one labor pain feels like.
You're the quarterback in that moment, sweetheart. I'm there to get the ice chips.
If you want to feel the pain, you go right ahead. But I'm telling you, there is no epidural that will ease the pain or numb the pain or make the pain not be able to be felt.
That's good,
when you're
Chris.
bringing an idea to life.
That's good.
You're going to lose, you may lose friends. You may lose your job. It's going to cost you your money for sure. You may feel it in your body, but there will be pain.
That's good.
There will be pain. And we experienced this right before we moved here. This is a part of the story that you need to know.
Yeah. It's just a very simple statement, but life got tough, as it does. And again, this is a cycle. It was the first time in this part of our story, but it wasn't the last time in our story. But life got tough. It felt in a lot of ways like we had been blacklisted from a community of people that we had loved and grown up in. We were, I don't know what the right term is. We were transitioned out of our ministry position, which is the Christian way of saying we got fired.
You're fired.
We're going to transition you into a new season. Oh, okay. Got it. And we laugh about it now and totally get it. And I'm fully prepared to transition someone else into their new season if it ever comes to that time. But
Whoa!
It felt like our world that we had loved, and that it's not even fair to say that we built it, but the world that had built us was really crumbling down around us, and it hurt, man. Our friends and some family were brought into closed door meetings and told that we were being disobedient, and that they were not to have anything to do with us. We moved here, maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but friends and family and that sort of thing that we had spent a decade building life with, none of them were allowed to come and help us pack our truck, the moving truck. My sister's boyfriend at the time, I don't even remember his name, was the only guy that came.
He wasn't even a Christian.
It didn't matter. I just needed somebody to help me pick up my couch. Because all I got left is this couch, I got to get it on the truck. It hurt.
I remember a church that heard about our situation because we lost our childcare, we lost our insurance.
Yeah.
We had worked only for a church since we were 19, and we had gone to college. But church, it don't translate in 2009 after The Big Short. Like Tyler was interviewing at Enterprise, and they pick everybody up, and they did not pick him up. And so we was without a job.
Not me. I even wore a suit with pleated slacks.
That was the last time you ever wore a suit.
Pleated slacks. The pleats didn't even get the job done.
And
it's a shame.
This other church heard about us.
It's a fine suit from JCPenney.
And they felt sorry for us. And they brought us, I'll never forget, they showed up at our door with Benevolence groceries.
Oh, yeah.
It was so embarrassing.
But we needed groceries, so it was like, them babies had to eat.
Thank you.
It did.
And no church planting organizations were interested in us. I mean, God bless them, but I'm strong. And
why God bless them? Because you're strong. What does that mean?
I'm just like, there was no church planter that were like, oh, you're a woman in ministry. Sign us up to get behind you.
God bless me is what you should be saying.
Sure.
Right?
God bless you. Poor Tyler. I'm sorry.
Just joking.
No, I'm not sorry. I'm happy and I'm passionate about who God has called me to be. And let's just say that.
I am too.
You are a woman in ministry. Preach, girl. Preach. Yes. You are needed and wanted in the kingdom. But
they didn't know what to do with you.
No, and even then the ones that would take women in ministry, direct quote, they literally said to us, you are too young, you are too Southern, and Boston is far too hard. That's like the line. And for a long time, that pain is what fueled us. God has had to work that pain out of us because you can't work from a place of pain. You have to work from a place of purpose. And at some point, you've got to realize that if you work from a place of pain, this isn't even our notes here. If you work from a place of pain, the seed will die at some point. Because remember, we said you've got to make sure you're healthy, right? So we've had to deal with a lot of that pain. But in those years, it was just filled with a ton of tears, a ton of confusion, a ton of anger and hurt. But here's what we can say looking back. When all the pressure, hopefully this will help some of you. When all the pressure is mounting and the seed is causing you pain, you have to keep pushing through. You have to keep leaning into the wonder.
That's good, babe.
And you can't stop building.
That's really
good. The reason we can kind of laugh about that stuff now is because, one, we've allowed God to heal us. We've been in therapy. We've had great people come around us and help us see. But really, we are so grateful for all of that struggle and all of that hard moments, because now looking back, what I see is we were allowing that Psalm 139, God test me, cross-examine me, really see what's in me, because all of our hard moments were preparing us to build a church in one of the most expensive, most anti-gospel, slow-growing, slow-moving cities in America.
Yeah.
Like, we were like, yeah.
Welcome home, everybody.
We're little bitty David taking on Goliath. Let's
Right.
plant an evangelical Protestant church in 2012 and move into what we have all lived in the last decade. Like, we know the cultural tides that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
How many of you know we've had to get a strong backbone and some thick skin?
That's right.
And God was developing us through that hardship,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what you need to hear in your own life.
Yeah, and that seed was planted and doing seed things, leaning into the wonder for 7-8 months. And we didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know when we were going to go, but we knew that we weren't going to leave without the blessing of our covering. We knew that we weren't going to move on into anything next until we got the blessing from our pastor. And so we prayed and we waited. We kept attending the church that we had been fired from. Thank God it was gigantic and we could hide out in like the rafters, like in the way back. Like, you know, we'd come in about 3 minutes late, like most people do in New England. And then we'd leave about 3 minutes early, like other people do in New England, and that's okay. But we lived that life, and we valued the anonymity, but we never quit going. We always showed up. We'd always smile. We would buy our coffee somewhere else on the way so that we didn't have to get our coffee in the foyer, full disclosure. But we went, and about 8 months later, our pastor reached out to us, and long story short, he met us, he put a blessing in our hand, and then he gave us his blessing to go forward with the dream and the vision that was in our heart to do. And so we took it, we jumped at it, and we got right in. From there, or in that process, we realized, hey, we're gonna have to actually get to work. And so Crystal started a cleaning company.
My Susie Homemaker.
But you did more than cleaning.
Came up with that name. Yeah, maybe like cakes. Whatever anybody would pay me cash to do.
Organize your sock drawer. Like, she was all about it. And she did all those things. I started working, essentially as a day laborer, like just anybody who needed something done, I knew how to do it. Right? Like, you talk about building things.
Carpenter.
I just figured it out because I had kids at home that needed something to eat, and they wanted, not the heat in Louisiana. They wanted the air conditioner to run. Like, that was the reason why. And so we figured it out. She would be vacuuming up cat hair all day long and like just praying, God, move. Not move us, but God, move on the heart of our pastor. I'd be hanging off of ladders, painting people's houses. I am horrible at painting. They probably had to hire someone to come in after me and repaint what I messed up, but I'd cash the check anyway. Come on, right? Like, we went for it. And I'm praying, God, like, don't move us. That's not the prayer. I knew I was ready. I knew that seed had been planted and God had been fertilizing it, but God, it was prayer. God, move on the heart of our pastor. And he did. And that was it. And
he asked us on that day, he said, when are you moving to Boston?
Okay.
And we had felt like God had kind of told us. That was in December of 2010. He brought us to a Sonic, and he said, when you praying, I've been praying. I feel like we're supposed to get behind you. And the Lord had already kind of told us, March 4th is going to be your moving date. And so March 4th is when we told our pastor. He said, all right, we'll get behind you. And so we got the moving announcements. We brought a picture of the moving announcement. We
really?
sent our moving announcements.
Oh, it's down there.
Oh, man, you can't see it here. That's all right.
There's a husky guy with a big head in the way. You can't see it.
The Tullos family is moving to Boston, March 2011. We made the announcement. We had the garage sale. We sold 2/3 of everything we owned. We put our house on the market. The house goes under agreement. We're also excited. Like, it's finally all lining up. Our pastor is excited about this.
Check.
We have a moving truck, the house, and then 3 days before the moving truck, on March 1st, the deal fell through. And we were like hot air balloons that just crashed to the ground. And we were so disappointed, and we went for a drive. And never forget.
Well, more specifically, we went for chips and salsa.
We did go for chips and salsa.
That's one of the unwritten points in this message, is that chips and salsa
will solve
can
everything.
Help you figure out a lot of problems.
We went for chips and salsa, and we were like, what? We really still felt like God was testing us. And some of you know this, but some of you don't. we said, God said, move March 4th. We're moving March 4th.
Yep.
And that Penske truck rolled up. We rolled our kids up and we sold. We had just got a tax refund. There's little wit in the Penske truck. We still had the mortgage of a house that was underwater. We couldn't sell it because the big short had happened just a couple years before that. We had a ton of credit card debt from remodeling this house that we thought we were going to live in another 5-7 years. We had a tax refund of about $7,500 that we figured would be enough for a first, last, and security deposit somewhere in a few days in a hotel and moving truck, and our 2 little boys. And we had no jobs, no health insurance. We didn't know a soul here. We just had a call from God and a grace that was granted to us to believe in a God that can move mountains. And we got our sons. Tyler got in the Penske truck with his daddy. I got into our old SUV with the 2 boys and my mother-in-law, and we drove to Birmingham. And I'll never forget, my mother-in-law was freaking out. I mean, this was her little baby boy who had lived in Baton Rouge his entire life. I'm now kidnapping her 2 grandchildren. And
I think she called CPS.
I'm sure she did. And they were like, we can't get involved in this, man. And so we're almost to Birmingham, and she has literally like questioned me the whole time, like any good mother would. What are y'all doing? This is insane. You have a mortgage. You have, like, what are you going to do? What are you crazy? And I pulled over the car. And it just so lovingly, the Lord just graced me. I said, Nona, you're making it really hard for me to obey Jesus right now. I said, I can't answer your questions, but I just know we have to go. And she was so gracious. She kept her mouth shut the rest of the way. And God was actually really kind to her. On Sunday, we rolled into Washington, D.C. We went to this random church, and the pastor preached about following God into the unknown. And she got in the car, and she went, okay, I'll never say another word. And she didn't.
She tried real hard.
She tried real hard.
Bless her heart. She tried real hard.
So we roll into Boston, and we get to the extended stay in Quincy. And well, why don't you tell this part? Because this is a good part for you to tell.
Yeah, so we pull in, and it rained on us the entire drive from March the 4th until March the 6th. Like, it didn't stop raining 1 second. Like, we literally drove up in a storm that was moving up the East Coast. I was like, this seems dumb. Why don't we just wait till tomorrow? Like, it just kept raining the whole time. And so we get there. Crystal has been working in the way that her brain works to like put a plan together. We didn't have an apartment lined up or anything because we didn't know. I don't know where Quincy was.
Been here twice.
Yeah, we didn't know anything, and so she was like, okay, looks like places where we can afford apartments, and she lined up showings and things in all these different areas. We go to bed the night of March the 6th. It's a Sunday night, and we wake up on the 7th, and she says, all right, Tyler, we're going to Roslindale, I think it was. And I said, no, we're going to Newton, because I did things the way that my brain works, which is basically just having the absence of a plan. And so she's like, Newton, we don't have any appointments in Newton.
And I'm like,
she Googles it on the air card, right, on my mom's laptop. And she's like, oh, and by the way, it's a little pricey. A little bit outside of our $0 per month budget,
and I'm like, why are you going to Newton?
No, and I said, well, here's what happened. Went to bed on Sunday, March the 6th, and believe it or not, call me crazy or not, whatever, I had a dream in my guts that God said, Tyler, go to Newton.
Like you dreamed it.
Like I dreamt it, as clear as I'm sitting in this room right here with you.
And I didn't. Just for everybody to understand, this wasn't like a dream. Like I have a dream to go to Newton. This was like you, like in
I fell asleep. God said in my sleep, go to Newton. I woke up. I put 6 humans in a 5-seater SUV, and I started driving to Newton. And I didn't tell any of them where we were going. It was that clear. Go to Newton. And so we pull up into Newton, and Crystal has scrambled, can't find anything. And we pull into Newton Center. The live audience here will know. If you're listening and you're from Newton, you know Newton Center. Beautiful little spot there. And it's changed a lot since we've been here. But we pull in, and we literally look like the Clampett family falling out of this SUV. There's 2 kids in car seats. There's like generations, right? Like who are these people getting out of the car in Newton Center? I got a ticket the first time I ever did there. I didn't know you had to pay to park in a parking lot, right? Like you're not supposed to pay. It's just a parking lot. That's why it's there. And we drove in and I'm just like, I don't know, Crystal. I just believe God's going to give us one of these houses. I just convinced. And we went and drove by one and it was on Tyler Terrace, the road. And I was like, that's a sign. And it was like, only like other than the obvious, it was an actual sign. There was no other sign involved. I called a realtor who was selling a house. I was like, what's your ask price on this house? And it was
like 1.4
multiple millions of dollars. And I said, oh, cool. I'll get back to you in a little while. I was like, wait a minute. I don't know. Maybe God didn't say Newton, but here's the thing. We drive around, we pull in the parking lot, Newton Center, we get out and we look across the parking lot and there's a real estate brokerage right across, CRG Realty. I don't think it's there anymore. And Crystal's like, oh my gosh, maybe they have a place where we can live. And so we walk in and it's all quiet and everybody's like clicking around. Is this okay, Story? Are y'all okay with this? This okay? And they're like clicking around and we're like, hi. And they're like, can we help you? And we're like, yes, we would like a place to live, please. And they go, okay, this is not usually how it happens, but when are you thinking? And I looked at her and I was like, later this afternoon would actually be perfect. And she goes, oh, okay. And so they scramble and they get somebody to go show us these apartments. How are we going to pay? It was whatever it was. It doesn't matter. Like they showed us the apartments. Long story short, that showing led to another showing that led to the first apartment that we moved into in Watertown, where a landlord actually said yes to us. Check this out. You talk about miracles, right? I've never seen somebody raised from the dead, but I have seen this, where a landlord in Massachusetts looked at me, didn't ask me for verification of employment, didn't ask me to see a pay stub, didn't ask me if I had enough money to rent his house, just looked at my credit score, which I don't even know how I had a good credit score, right? Like, I don't even know why, but he said, yeah, y'all can live here. It was amazing. Like, it was a miracle,
and
right?
That was the first time Nona said, remember I told you she had kept her mouth shut. And finally, we're about to sign the lease. And she says, guys, how are you going to afford $2,000 a month plus the $1,300 mortgage you have?
Right.
And again, God just had granted us this faith. And I said, does it really matter if it's $1 a month or $10,000 a month? If God does not provide, we're toast.
Yeah.
And this really brings us, we're going to take a break here in just a second for all the listeners, but this really brings us, you have to lean into the wonder. But with your idea that's brewing in your heart, if you want to see it come to pass, you're going to have to take steps of foolish faith. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to do things that, synonyms for foolish are stupid, idiotic, silly, careless, reckless.
Half-witted,
brainless.
That one hurts a little bit.
Dumb. And I'm just telling you, the bigger the dream in you, the more foolish you may have to look. Hmm. And we have just seen that time and time again in our story. And it really goes back to this one moment, and then we're going to take a break here. It really goes back to this one moment before we moved. We're sitting in a hospital room. Hmm. In that struggle period, I had found out that I was pregnant with our third baby. And on the night before, we had to make a decision. There's part of the story we skipped, but we had interviewed for a job here instead of planting a church. And on the night before, we had to give that person an answer about whether we were going to take their job. I started miscarrying this baby. Mm-hmm. And we had to rush to the hospital room. It was the first night we had to apply for state aid for medical insurance. And mm-hmm. I remember feeling so much shame about that and feeling so stupid for having told people we were going to move to Boston and start a church and nobody was behind us. And you just get to these moments in life where you're so over your head in water. And we're sitting there in that hospital room and we're staring at the ultrasound screen and I'm seeing that baby is not going to make it. And I looked at Tyler, and he's sitting in the hospital room with me, and he had this little red Bible in his hand that he had bought us for our first wedding anniversary. And he's holding it, and he's just, just fumbling with the pages. And I said to him, Tyler, just take the job. I said, it's not what we feel like God's saying to do, but it'll get us to Massachusetts. It'll put a roof over our head. We'll have health insurance. I said, just take the job. And he looked at me, and it was the first time that I saw this tenacity in his eyes. And he said to me, and some of you need to hear this. He said, Crystal, no. He said, I am so sick of reading this Bible and it just be stories. He said, if we are ever going to live our own story of faith, this is our moment. And I remember just in that hospital room, I thought, I can follow that. I can follow into the unknown. That foolish faith is what it's going to take to see your dream come to pass.